Thank you. Okay, hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for the first Astro webinar of the year. And a special thanks to our guest, Dr. Tyler Hutchison, for joining us today. Just a brief introduction. Tyler completed her PhD in 2022 in Texas A&M. Shout out me if I'm wrong. And now since then she's a NASA Postdoctoral Fellow. And today she's going to talk about her amazing research, talking about the journey, and also giving us advices. The last thing that I really want to mention is that please make sure that you check out her website because it's full of amazing resources. And I already told her that I'm a big fan. So thank you, Tyler. The stage is yours.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That was a beautiful introduction. Let me share screen. Okay, great. All right. Everyone can see slides?
Yes, we can.
Cool. All right. Yeah, well, I'm also honored that I'm the first of y'all's new series for the year. That's awesome. Hi, everyone. I am Taylor Hutchison. I have been at Goddard now I'm in my fourth year at Goddard. Who knows where we go next? But I'm really excited to chat with y'all today. Um, it's going to be a mix of a couple of things. And so the way I'm kind of splitting this up is the first part, which will probably be the majority of I'm allotting 30 minutes to leave time for discussion. So this first part is going to be, career path, advice, tips and tricks, occasional hot take, um, and kind of sharing some of the things you can do as part of graduate school, and also just like as being a scientist in a society. And then part two will be a speed run of some fun science. It's meant to be more as like a teaser, and would love to chat more about it afterward if anyone's interested. But I'm gonna lean heavily on the first part because I really appreciate what this group does. So, my path to astronomy. This was me as a tiny child. Um, so when I was really young, I know you commonly in this field you hear people say like, oh, I've always, stared at the stars when I was a child and I knew I wanted to be an astronomer. Um, I deeply, for some reason, wanted to be a mummified Egyptian mummy. I think I watched The Mummy at too young a formative age, and I thought they were really cool. And so I was devastated when I turned 5 and learned I couldn't do this. Um, so instead, I was like, okay, well, pivot. I also like the things in the water. So, so then I decided, okay, marine biology is probably my future. And so I started like really, dreaming about swimming with dolphins and whales and then, getting to college, I'm starting, doing physics. I meet the one astrophysicist at the tiny liberal arts university I attended, is Dr. Bottorff, and he invited me to help out with the observatory on campus, which was very beautiful. And that kind of got me hooked. So I didn't actually know I liked astronomy or was interested in it scientifically until like halfway through college. Um, but the minute I got to use this telescope to look at, supermassive black holes in nearby galaxies, I got real excited. And we've kind of not looked back since. So after college, I went and did graduate school at Texas A&M University, working with Casey Papovich. Um, I would be happy to chat more about life experiences there, specifically at that university. But I was there for about 6 years, and then after 6 years, I was also lived in that building for 6 years. And then after 6 years, or over the course of it, being an observational astronomer, I really love that we get to travel a lot. You get to like run all over the globe, use telescopes everywhere, go to conferences, meet new people. Like we travel a lot in this job, even if you don't use telescopes. And so that's been a really beautiful part of this because growing up, that was not something I ever had access to, financially. And now I work at NASA. This is really dorky film thing that was done right when I started at NASA. For best colleges, it was just to encourage people to pursue higher education. But so yeah, like I said, I've been at NASA for 4 years. Um, it's a very fascinating place. I would love to chat more detail if anyone's curious about what it's like to work at NASA, both before and now during this current administration and the attacks on federal funding. I can go into any detail on that. All of my thoughts and hot takes will be in my capacity as a US citizen, not as an employee working on a government agency. But yeah, it's been a wild ride. I've learned a lot along the way. And so I kind of wanted to spend a second with y'all. And by a second, I mean quite a bit of time actually, going through some of the things I learned in grad school that I deeply appreciate. Some things that I didn't know coming in because I was first gen, came from a very low income family and background, and there were so many things that, you have to learn on the fly when you don't know, like when you've not had people in your life who've done this before, where there's like a lot of hidden knowledge and hidden curriculum. Um, and so I'm going to share some of that as well. It's not a exhaustive list, of course, but I think those are things that are really important to communicate and share with everyone. Um, and then also, some things I regret that hopefully y'all will learn from my mistakes and not do this, or stop doing it. And then, we'll move on from there. So from things I learned in grad school, and this is mostly positive. Well, I started off with something not positive, but reading archive daily is really hard. And I know that in grad school, we're told that, to be a good scientist, you need to be reading this constantly. You need to be aware of the papers that are coming out. And while, yes, like in theory, that's a lovely idea, and you do want to stay up to date on the things in the field and the science that's being done, it is sometimes an impossible task, especially if you have any flavor of neurospiciness. It becomes even harder. And so something I learned in grad school was this was hard for me. And learning how to come up with workarounds or other methods of, trying to still get as much information as I can from the field while knowing that setting this task for myself was going to continue to end in like generally failure. So I just want to validate if anyone's having that trouble. Another was specifically time management. So I don't know if this is something that y'all have experienced yet in your own journey, but doing research is absolutely time management. And especially when it comes to research in graduate school, I feel like unless you knew from the beginning effectively what the answer would be, there's also not really a clear endpoint with your study, right? And with your research. And there's often bumps along the way, or you have to pivot, like something didn't come out the way you're expecting, and you have to completely pivot and change the direction that you're going. All of these things can happen. And time management can be really challenging with that, but that is absolutely a life skill that's worth cultivating and will only continue to benefit you later in life, especially as you get more and more things on your plate and where time management becomes incredibly important, which I know I saw at least one faculty member on this call. So like I know like people can, you can ask them, when you start having 7 hats you have to wear, it becomes really helpful if you've like honed these skills early on. And then also in grad school, it's not like you have infinite spare time. You're also incredibly busy. And so this is just helpful at any stage. Um, Another thing I learned in grad school, and I like explicitly stating this, is that academia, as a whole seems to frequently devalue service work, advocacy work, and outreach. And so things like this group, for example, I think this is beautiful and lovely and necessary, but there are plenty of people and societally in academia who'd be like, this isn't like, you're not here to do this. Like, you're here to just do your work. And like completely ignoring the fact that scientists are people too, right? And we're like a whole complex of things, and we're not just like the robot that does the work. And so learning how to balance that with the things that are important to you morally and, important as part of who you are as a scientist, like, if outreach is really important to you, for example, learning how to balance that with the things that academia actually does value. Another thing I learned throughout grad school, which I'm sure plenty of y'all can relate to as well, is um, communication can be really challenging, sometimes in unexpected ways. And I learned this through working with my PhD advisor. He's a very visual learner and also has a 30-second attention span. So, so you have to like communicate very quickly and very efficiently in 30 seconds, and ideally visually. Like so, it's like some kind of informative graph that answers all the questions. Like you can get everything and all the information from it in 30 seconds. Great. And that was a really interesting, kind of fun challenge to have because it forces you to adapt the way that you're communicating your science to people who process information differently. And um, I don't think that's something I really appreciated before grad school. So I'm sure y'all are experiencing this as well, but these are just I'm listing things that hopefully are resonating with you, or if not, are something for you to reflect on that you might realize is also happening in your life. And then also, this is also kind of an hidden curriculum realm, but mentorship is more of a constellation than like a one-way path, right? Like I feel like canonically, we're told in academia that it should be, you have your PhD advisor and or your supervisor, and they're essentially like they're the everything. They're your job, your manager, they're your supervisor, they're your mentor. Like you go to them for advice. Like they're like the one person. I feel like that's the way that it kind of feels like academia pushes us to in some ways. But no one person can solve every part of like the type of mentorship and advice that you need, and it's actually like unrealistic to expect one person to fill all those roles. And it's much better if you kind of view it more as a constellation or as a tree. Vanguard STEM has an amazing article about this where it's like building a mentorship tree and how, finding people who fit these different things. Like you can have a one person who's really good at professional like development and going to them for those types of questions. And another person who's really good at advocating for what you want. That could be another person, like very different skills, right? So you might need different people to fill those roles. And like it's really important to think about that and think about what you might need and kind of think about who you could reach out to help kind of build your own tree of mentorship. And then this one I put it like kind of at the bottom because I feel like it's separate kind of from work specifically, but explore what interests you. I mean, we have our research right now. Hopefully, it's research you find interesting, but or some part of the science you find interesting. But I think it's also really important to explore other things that interest you as well scientifically. Like, and I mean any part of what it means to be a scientist. So, like, if there's a subfield that is not at all related to what you do, but you find it really deeply interesting, I fully support like spending some time every now and then going and reading recent papers on that, or going finding review papers and keeping up to date. You'll never know what type of information you can pull from that and like where there might be points of connection that like you'd never thought of before that are very novel points of connection. Um, Another thing is like I'm very much I love computer programming specifically. Um, and it's just like puzzles continuously, but like with, you get the immediate result too, so it's like instant gratification. So I love coding. And especially in grad school, when there was a package I learned about like some kind of, plotting package or visualization package or statistics package that I wasn't using in my actual research and had no use for it, I just make up like a tiny little problem on the side as like a side hobby, and I would use the package that way. And it's because just to like learn how to use it, right? Because for me, it was more just like gathering information and finding new tools. But what's fun is that every single time I've done that, I have gone back to those skills at some other point later down the line. And so they've been very useful. And it teaches you also to learn quickly, more examples of literally what a PhD is, right? Which is you can learn things quickly, you can do exciting science, and you can produce things. Like, right, like that's effectively a PhD. And like so having more examples of learning quickly and like, just kind of stretching your brain in different ways is actually really important. All right. So I also wanted to list some hidden curriculum, and I would love to hear if there's more things here that y'all have to input because, I kind of like it being like a growing list. And hopefully one day there will be a massive list of the hidden curriculum and there will no longer be hidden curriculum. But that is not today. Um, so one thing I did not appreciate in grad school until the very end was that apparently showing up to things is important. And I don't mean like your mandatory stuff, right? Like classes and all. I mean like the more optional things that sometimes sound less optional, but like are still optional, like seminars, astro coffees if y'all have those, colloquia, if they're not in your field, things like that. Showing up to those events can sometimes seem very important, at least visually, to like the senior folks in the room or the supervisors in the room. Um, and I didn't appreciate that, and I feel like it's kind of silly, but like that's an important thing to note. Um, Another thing I learned over time was and this feels a silly as well, but like after meeting someone, especially if it's like a visiting speaker, sending a follow-up email to either connect with them or thank them. Just to like leave that door open, right? Like you're just like building more connections. You're just making sure that they remember your name. If you ever contact them in the future and they look up your name in their email, they'll see that like you'll have had some dialogue before. Um, Unfortunately, the game of academia is it's who you know. It's like who you know, who knows who you know, who knows who you know. And so just kind of it's not inauthentic, but just kind of intentionally continuing to cultivate those connections is not a bad idea. And is definitely some things that people who have had family members and or relatives who've gone through academia, they already know these things. And so I think it's a really important part of the hidden curriculum. Another one is meeting with visiting speakers. I started doing this in grad school actually because the faculty weren't showing up. And so the four speakers would have very empty schedules. I don't know if y'all have this problem. But I just was embarrassed actually on behalf of our department. So I just started signing up to meet with speakers. And what was really fun actually is you just meet with them and you just chat. You can ask them about like advice for, graduate school or advice for being in the field. It doesn't have to be science specific to yours, or ask them for more detail and like what's their mentorship like, literally anything. I've learned so much from those meetings during grad school. And at least two of those people were on hiring committees when I was applying for postdocs the first time. So again, that feels so gross, like and capitalistic to think that way, but like just as a note, like this is the also just kind of expanding your network of people that you know is always good. Um, so just another suggestion. And then this one's is, I feel like very culturally specific as well, which is definitely why I consider it hidden curriculum. The way you describe your work really matters. And I'm sure some of y'all have direct experiences with this, but including describing how you work. And so I feel like sometimes societally we're encouraged to like downgrade or like downplay like the amount of work we're doing or how long something's taking or like how much work is being invested in something. We're kind of, I don't know, encouraged to like not exaggerate, even though it's not actually exaggeration. It's a lot of y'all do a lot of work. Um, Depending on how much you do that, it can and sometimes be interpreted differently. And this also really depends on like supervisors and things like that. But one of my colleagues in grad school got burned this way because she was incredibly humble. And her supervisor thought that she wasn't doing anything when she was like working 80 hours, which is also unhealthy. But like, literally just the way that like describing your work. And so just kind of being a little bit cognizant of that. And then confidence goes a long way, frustratingly, was another hidden curriculum thing I experienced. Um, there were some people who looked incredibly put like they got it all together. They're very confident, and turns out they didn't know anything. So, but they got very far. And so just having, even if it's like just like tricking yourself into confidence, for some things, it's actually very helpful. I do this when I give talks because, like in conferences, because even though, you've given this talk a ton of times before, sometimes you still like, I don't know, I still have imposter syndrome constantly. And so going to these conferences, sometimes I just like pretend I'm confident. And then I become confident throughout the talk because like, you're just tricking yourself into it, right? But it really does come across in a good, and unfortunately, in a frustratingly positive way, um, in to other people. And then this kind of is, I touched on this already from the previous slide, but your PhD advisor should not be your only mentor. This is not ever explicitly stated, uh, generally, unless you're attending things like this, right? That are actively meant for mentorship and supporting your community. Um, this is not something that's part of the real curriculum, the visual curriculum, the explicit curriculum. And so I didn't know this until about halfway through grad school that I shouldn't treat my PhD advisor as my only mentor. And then, wow, the world opened up when I learned that, there's other people who can help you too. So, and nothing, no shade on my PhD advisor. It's more just, literally one human and has capacity, does not have capacity for everything, right? And then this also kind of goes back to the way you describe your work or like how you're doing your work, but don't assume your supervisor knows what you've been doing or how much you've been working. Because like generally, ideally, if it's a good mentorship relationship, right, they do know. But sometimes they don't. And just making sure that like they know that you care and you're working and you're actively like doing your job. Um, because sometimes the silence is interpreted differently and it's very frustrating and unfair. But that is another hidden curriculum that exists. Um, some things I regret. Hopefully this isn't like depressing. I was just like reflecting on grad school before this talk, and I just in case any of these nuggets are helpful for y'all, I wanted to share them. Um, Knowing that, also some of y'all are probably almost out of grad school, so this might not be useful for you. But it's this is not a call out of anyone, but working 80 hours a week is not healthy. And unrealistic, will cause you to burn out. And I did this for my first 2 years of grad school because I came from college where I was working at 1.4 jobs to put myself through college. And so I was working 80 hours a week, but it was split between things. And so when I got to grad school, I thought I was still supposed to do that amount. And academia loves that. They were like, yes, please, sleep in the office, keep doing all of this work. And they're not going to tell you no. And so it becomes a very unhealthy cycle because again, they want you to keep working. And by they, I mean just kind of academia as a whole, but like it's really important to try and start early, like kind of enforcing these healthy boundaries so that you can last because it is truly a marathon. It is not a race. Doing science is always a marathon, but especially graduate school is a marathon. Um, Something else I kind of regret from grad school is centering it in my life, like kind of to the exclusion of everything else. Like this kind of ties in with like constantly being plagued by thoughts of work or worrying about work, or if I'm resting, being feeling guilty that I'm not working. Um, or like not going to do something because like I'm in the middle of debugging something and I feel like if I just spent 10 more hours on this, I'd figure it out. Uh, you also have life to live, and this is meant to be a job and an experience, but not your entire life. And I wish someone had said that to me at any stage in grad school. But that is something that I regret is how much I centered it in my life to the negative impact of other things, which includes working on vacation. If you do this, please help yourself stop doing this because um, it becomes a habit, and it's something I've been actively trying to unlearn while at NASA. And I'm still not great at it. I was downloading data from JWST on Christmas Day, but don't be like that. But I do regret that in grad school specifically. Like there was just so many times I was just continually working well with family, and they were very patient with me. But I do regret not just focusing and centering them at that time. So things I would do if I attended now. And again, hopefully these are helpful for you and not depressing. Um, create a mentorship advising compact with my PhD advisor. I didn't know this was possible at the time. This is something I've learned as part of some mentorship I've been doing, which I'll talk about in a second. But mentorship and advising compacts for people who aren't familiar is you're essentially just explicitly writing down the expectations from both sides. And like once stated, it feels like, wow, such an obvious thing that everyone should do because then we don't have to guess what the expectations are and worry that we're disappointing our supervisor when everything's fine. Um, or they don't even know that we're stressing out. And if we just told them, they'd say you're fine. Or we're not doing something they want, but they're not telling us. And so they're just continually annoyed, but not telling us. And so just having something like this where there's explicit expectations laid down from both ends, there's things written down on how to address if something's not being done, like how to revisit effectively, like here, this is what we agreed to. This is what you've agreed to. Like how do we reconnect with that? Is incredibly helpful. And there's a ton of examples online. There's many, generally younger faculty, but many of my colleagues actually now set this up with their students as well, which I think is a beautiful thing. Explicitly discussing communication styles and needs. This, I think, can tie in really nicely with an advising compact if that was something that was done. But kind of like what I mentioned with my supervisor, I had to learn the hard way that this poor man has a 30-second attention span because he's so busy. And so I had to learn how to very quickly had to learn how to communicate quickly, communicate visually very effectively. Um, and I think, especially depending on how your brain works, it could be really useful to like know these things ahead of time, especially how you work. So how you communicate, what you need to process information, and then knowing with at least your main collaborators also how they communicate and what they need. And that helps you be even more efficient and like have a better experience overall. I also, if I were to do this again, I would enforce far more rigid boundaries between work and home, so that, I have enough sleep and I eat regular meals, uh, at least twice a day, if not 3 times a day. Like I like go on hikes and enjoy nature and don't just hole up in my house when the beautiful weather's happening outside. Like just having healthier boundaries because it is still a job. Like, yes, this is part of your life, but it is still a job. And I never had that messaging said to me. And so I treated it as job plus life. And then do more things not work related. I mean, just like lean into your hobbies, go hiking, go enjoy. I don't know if y'all are on the coast, but go enjoy wherever California has to offer the really nice weather, the sun, and just go enjoy things like that and make sure that you're giving time to let your brain relax because that's also your brain will work better if it has time off. Like you'll be more efficient or you'll be better at problem solving if you give your brain time off. And then this is specifically for me. I'm not calling anyone out here, but if I were to do this again, I would get a therapist sooner and I would get medicated sooner. I have severe ADHD and did not know this until the end of grad school. And it explains so many things about the life choices I've made. Um, But being medicated for it was really helpful. I do great now. Because it turns out I can choose to focus on things now, because I have my ADHD medicated. But grad school was a struggle because this was all undiagnosed, and was just doing it live. So would definitely like be more intentional about like mental health as well, because it is part of, if you treat your body, think of it as like a computer system. You need to make sure that you're making sure the health of the computer system is running as well, because that dictates everything else. And then this is kind of related to, the rigid boundaries. Try and see my loved ones more often, be more present. This sounds really depressing. I feel like I've made this whole talk really depressing. I'm so sorry. Um, just invest in your people. And this one, I'm really bad at saying no to things. I don't know if anyone else feels this way, but some advice I got recently, which is really helpful, is have a no folder, either in your like whatever Google Drive-esque thing you have, or your email, and have at least one thing you say no to at least every other month. Um, and it's especially more important if you're like the type of person like me where you sign up for too many things, because obviously you care about a lot of things and you find a lot of things interesting, but you are also only one human and you have only a certain amount of time where you can do these things. Um, and so saying no to more things so you can better invest in the things you've said yes to is something I never really appreciated, but I do appreciate now. Okay, so I'm gonna move to like hopefully less like more wholesome or just like uplifting things. But something I find really important to share is my philosophy as a scientist. You don't have to agree with this, but this is my philosophy. And it's that the service that we provide to our local and scientific communities should be equally as important as the science that we accomplish. And I know I mentioned the hot takes at the beginning. I don't think this is a hot take, but I've been told many times by generally more senior people, but like that this is actually a very hot take in their opinion. Like the science is the only important part. But we are scientists, we are people, you're part of a community. And if these things are important to you, that's also part of being a scientist. And so they should be equally as important as the work that we do. Academia generally as a whole does not value them that way, but just to, validate if you're having these feelings, that this is absolutely important. And so in this line, I'm going to talk about a few things I do that kind of address this other part of who I am as a scientist. So one thing, my website was mentioned earlier, which is very, very touching. One thing I really value is, I mean, you probably gleaned this from me sharing like what I think of as the hidden curriculum and like things I learned and what I wish other people knew. There's so many barriers for access, and it's such like an elitist thing sometimes, the way academia operates. And a lot of it sometimes is based on the mentorship that you have, and to no fault of your own, right? Just like the access you have to resources or to mentorship, and specifically good mentorship. Um, Sometimes that's the make or break between like an application that gets funding or gets a job versus one that doesn't. Like two equally good people, but one had more mentorship. And so they're just a little bit more like cutting edge looking, or their stuff is a little bit more polished. And it's literally just a factor of like how much support did they have, and advice and things people to learn from. So I was very fortunate to have a lot of amazing mentorship in grad school. And so when I was going through postdoc job cycle for the first time, at the end of grad school, I was kind of like blown away looking at literally my peers in the same institution, and seeing how little support they were getting. And I had so much support and so much knowledge from like writing telescope proposals and like all of these other things. Um, and so I essentially just started writing everything down, note down, compiling resources. Anything I made, I turned into templates to make resources. I started sharing it with my colleagues. One of my colleagues, they had applied by the end of the job cycle, they'd applied and not heard from any place. Uh, and then I finally like was so mad at their supervisor that I stole their statement and like I edited it, and I didn't like change the meaning of it. I just moved things around and made it a little bit more punchy, and they got 3 interviews. And that's not to say that it was me, right? It's more just like someone needed to like give them any kind of mentorship and show them like a more persuasive way to say something, and they didn't get that support. And so, oh, it's a little alarm. Um, so I created this website, that's very long-winded, but it's tx.ag/postdocs. I'll put the link on here. But for something that includes job app resources, including all the templates I've made, like example job tracker, a guide for it, other examples people have shared. Job templates, cover letter templates, literally almost like an ad libs, like fill in the blanks of like how to like things you should include. Um, a lot of information from my stuff, but then also again, this whole website page was read and or had resources supplied by like tens of different people. Also, spreadsheet templates for, making a spreadsheet tracker for your letter writers, to track what, what they need to do, all of the information that they might need, the deadline, their deadlines, your deadlines, all the things. Um, Email templates, if you want to email asking for fellowship examples from people you don't know or people you do know, or asking for advice from someone you don't know. I have all of those email templates as well, because again, that's it's like a hidden curriculum type of networking nuance that you only really learn either from knowing already or from by example. And then, here's the ad libs cover letter where literally it's just like, here, this is me. I'm this person at this institution. I have a strong background in blank, extensive experience with blank. My work has directly contributed to our knowledge in this subfield. Like, you can kind of see the way that like a cover letter could be structured. This is not the one way to do it. It's just a way to do it. But so this is just like a flavor of the resources that exist here, and I'm continually adding to it as more people send me resources. So if y'all ever look at it and have ideas, please send those to me as well. I welcome any and all. Um, and then another thing is I love coding, like I said. I also love data visualization. And so the background picture is just of my GitHub. But this foreground image that's just like cycling through is I find it really important to visually communicate science effectively, not just for outreach purposes, but also to other scientists. There are sometimes when you see these presentations at colloquia and stuff where it's just white background, black text, book of text on every slide. And that's really hard to get information from, or at least like meaningful information. And it's just very hard to focus. And so, like, properly communicating things is really important. And I love coding and plotting specifically. I feel like a really big passion. I call it like 2D art. Um, and so I love like coming up with new ways to show something and then sharing that code with the world. And so if you're ever interested in these, I have them on my GitHub as well. I would be happy to share. Um, and then also with related more now to like mentorship, I just wanted to highlight a couple things. I don't know, I mean, Aurora sounds like it's already kind of this, but something that's really important is mentorship, as we know. And so I'm part of a, wait, someone coming.
Brian has a question, I think.
Oh, sure. Yeah, go for it. Hello.
Okay, can you hear me all right?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, were you wanting to share slides? Okay.
Wait, you can't see my slides?
Oh, no, we can't see your slides.
Oh, thank God.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
No,
Yes,
no, no.
Brian, I've been sharing slides this whole time.
Oh, I cannot see it. Okay.
Well, that's
I
unfortunate. Oh, that
Uh,
scared me. Thank you
mm,
for asking. I I guess if it's on your end, if I end sharing and start sharing again, it wouldn't help probably. But let's try that real fast. We're going to stop and reshare. Let's see if this works. Did that work?
yeah, I can see it fine now.
Hey, okay, great.
All
Well, hello, welcome to
right.
welcome to this slide. Yeah, are there any other questions?
yes, you should come here.
I really wish I could be in person. Ugh. I also just escaping the snow would be great too. But cool. Okay, well, I'll we're almost done, I swear. Um so for mentorship, again, I think Aurora sounds a lot like this, but something food for thought if not, or if this is a part you might want to integrate into. Um Something I co-founded at Texas A&M was something we called MAGIC, which we're very proud of this acronym. It's the first letter of all these words. Everyone please clap. It was mentoring and advising graduates in an inclusive community. And the way that we structured this was, again, trying to remove the barriers for access, making it, for, like everyone on the same playing field, and removing the hidden curriculum. And so for all incoming first year astronomy graduate students to our program, we'd assign each of them a senior graduate student as their primary mentor, and then two other senior students as their secondary mentors. And they would meet with this mentee weekly, at least an hour a week. And then we'd monthly have these like professional development seminars where the whole cohort would come together. We'd teach them how to choose an advisor, how to read a paper, how to write a paper, how to apply for telescope time, how to code, all of these things. And then separately, there would also be monthly check-ins between the coordinators, who have two grad students running the whole thing, and the mentors to make sure that if there was a need that the mentee had that they didn't know they could advocate for yet, that their mentor could advocate for them. So we actually followed this model, originally built off of, I forget what it's called now, but there's a UC Irvine has this amazing PACE is the name of the program. And I don't know if actually it's still going, but we modeled it from PACE. And they're a really awesome program. Highly recommend checking them out too if they're still running. But I think this was a really helpful thing for one, just building the community more, but also sharing those resources. A thing that we're doing at NASA, which less important because y'all are in grad school, but in case you know people in undergrad who are applying to grad school and maybe haven't gotten in, post-baccalaureate positions are a thing. Not every university does this, but there are post-baccalaureate researchers, right? It's the between undergrad and grad school. It's becoming more and more of a thing because, as y'all probably are deeply familiar, graduate admissions is really hard, and it's getting harder every year. And so we created this mentorship constellation network at NASA, specifically at NASA Goddard, because there's a ton of postbac researchers who come there. So our cohort's usually 18 people a year, and they're all trying to apply to grad school, and none of them have support. And it's even more of a hit or miss on whether or not they've had mentorship. And generally, these are also people from underrepresented or minoritized populations or historically excluded populations. And so they're already like unfortunately set back because of literally just the way that like academia hides resources and like prioritizes people. And so this is like a program where we gather all the postdocs at NASA and we essentially do weekly programmatics with them to help them apply to grad school, learn how to navigate, get the most out of their postbac experience at NASA, how to network, all of these things. We're still kind of blown away by this, but remarkably, we've had like a 70 to 80% success rate for them getting into grad school on their first try. And anyone who doesn't, we fight to get it, but we find funding at NASA to keep them on for another year so they can try again the following year. The postbac position is really critical. And I think ideally more universities do this. So if y'all don't have postbac positions there, definitely if you have supervisors who have just a little pot of money and they don't know what to do with it, maybe have a postbac for a year. Another thing, advocacy-wise, I wanted to just highlight really quickly is this program called the Poverty Astronomy Collective. Y'all might have filled this out actually. I mean, hopefully we reached everyone, but we essentially it was a survey trying to probe how deeply entrenched poverty is in academia and people who are from backgrounds of poverty, like how far up the career ladder are they able to get? Because all of these things tie in, right? Like the background, the identity, if they have access to resources, if they like can afford it. My colleague Carlos, who's the PI of this program, he describes going to grad school sometimes as a violent choice. If you come from backgrounds of poverty, because if you're having to support family members or send money back home, or God forbid you're an international student having to send money to another country, it's you have to choose whether or not you're going to be able to properly support your family or not by going to grad school and taking the pay cut. And so we did this nationwide survey for American astronomers, like anyone based in the US. Got over 1,000 responses, and we've run some special sessions at WS. The results are exactly as you expect, right? There's very few people who come from backgrounds of poverty at the highest levels. The people who predominantly face these levels of deprivation are the more historically excluded and minoritized people. All of those things, but we have a massive white paper that's our flagship paper coming out soon. So I just wanted to highlight that so y'all can stay tuned. I'm looking at time. I could show y'all, I'm going to give you a vote. So I can show you the speed run of science, or we stop now and just chat. What would y'all prefer? Because I want to make sure there's time for like discussion and stuff.
I'm about to leave, but I was gonna email her later.
We can have a discussion. Yes. So we can start with the discussion if that's okay.
Sure. I can share my slides later for
Okay. Yeah, hi Taylor, this is Tara, I'm over here.
Hello.
I was gonna email you afterwards anyways, because I'm about to run, but, I agree with everything that you said. I'm also currently at MVP, and I remember we chatted at a conference, and that's what I wanna follow you up about. Cause,
Yeah.
there was like this one conversation that I had with you, like, in a bar or something at a conference that was like really impactful to my journey.
Oh, you make me
So
cry.
I'll follow up with you later about that.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
That would be lovely.
But in general, I just 100% agree with every single point that you had said.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. It's good to see you. I guess you have to run, but thank you so much.
Hello, my name is Ali. I really love your talk because last in last double A's I participated and I concluded that I should participate in something like AURORA
Yeah.
talks because most of the time I'm in a 4th year and most of my time I work at my office, just work, and I really regret why I shouldn't talk with people, go to coffee rooms, other things, talks. But I have 2 years more, and I try to do something like this more. Because next year I'm going to apply for postdoc. I need more resource like yours, and
Yeah.
yeah, thank you for your time.
No, yeah, I mean, thank you. And yes, 100%. You look up and you realize it's been a year and you just lived in your office for a year and you're like, oh no, where'd that go? Yeah, I completely hear you. And I'll definitely share the resources so you can have it for your job cycle next year. Lucky you not having to do it this year because it sucks. Fun fact. But
Thanks.
Okay, so I have a general question. What is it
Yeah.
like in NASA at this time?
Oh, what's it like? Yeah, okay. Thank you. I'll reiterate, this is my as a US citizen, not as a person who works at NASA. I'm speaking of my capacity as just a citizen. Uh, so if you had asked me a year ago, which many people did actually, like could I see myself working at NASA forever, like trying to become a civil servant or being a staff scientist there forever and like having that be my final place of science? I would have said yes. I actually really loved, I still love NASA, but like, when I first started at NASA, it was very much kind of like I was already on the fence about if I wanted to stay in academia or not. Um, but NASA was kind of like this really nice mixture of industry and science, where you still get the flavors of academia because literally you're still doing science, you're still part of academia, but you also get the industry side of it where you're eating lunch with engineers and you're getting to see the next telescope get built. And you get to like geek out over like the people in the clean room in their white suits putting together telescope pieces. Like it's just so cool. And um and then like the culture there is also very 9 to 5, which is the only reason I've been getting better at making my work-life balance better. Because they're like, don't talk to me after 5 p.m. And it's like, wow, that's novel. I did never knew that could happen. You can say that. Um, and like if you want to start an initiative there, like the NASA peer mentoring program we started, you can just do it. They're very supportive, especially if they don't have to pay. But it's been a very different tone shift recently. Obviously, the attacks on the federal government's funding of research has hit every science, I mean, especially health. But at NASA, I mean, there was the proposed cut of 50% to NASA, which trickles to everyone, right? It just starts at NASA. But thankfully, it looks like the budget is not going to do that. But it was really devastating to see like the kind of coerced retirements they were forcing on people, um, and the executive orders that were making it hard to be queer, hard to be openly non-binary. There was many people who had like remote working agreements where they would work remotely for some number of weeks and then come in and work in person some number of weeks, and that was an absolutely fine method. It worked perfectly. these people had to then choose between moving, which is expensive, and sometimes not possible, like if they were caregiving or something, or quitting. And a number of people had to make that choice. It was a really hard choice. Um, so it's definitely, there's different tone now. Like one beautiful like silver lining of the depressive things that are happening right now is that NASA's community has really come together, and it's very beautiful. Like everyone's banding together, and we're like, we got this, and like we support each other, and we wear like we coordinate colors and support our civil servants on some days. Like it's we have like coffee communal times that like everyone attends now when it used to not be as attended. Like we're trying to like keep community. So that part's very beautiful still. But yeah, there's definitely there's a heavy weight around NASA right now just because of, it's kind of almost hurt. Like I'm glad if we're hearing rumors that we're going to get the full funding. I think we'll know this week, but or at least majority funding, but it's almost offensive that we're getting that much funding whenever we now have hemorrhaged like a third of the workforce of NASA to accommodate for the 50% budget cut. Um, so anyway, that's very long-winded, but that's kind of how it is now. So I still love NASA, and I'm still having like in some aspects of it, I'm still having a beautiful time. Like the mentorship program is still heavily supported by the civil servants, by the directorship. Um, the people are amazing. It's the administration of NASA that is more hostile to NASA scientists, and that's the part that's not great. But I feel like I keep talking about depressing things with y'all. I'm so sorry. There are good things too.
I forgot to tell you that you have this option to stop recording if you want to be more comfortable while answering your question. Okay, yeah, I thought maybe that's something with. Okay, I have a question.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your talk. You were talking about like you shouldn't have a single mentor. But my question is that so when you live in this small kind of department astronomy program, which is not super easy to find people who work on same things that you are interested in, how you should go and find the perfect person to have another mentor or like
Yeah.
a mentor tree.
No, I mean, yes, excellent question. Yeah, it was an interesting challenge at A&M as well because that's actually it's getting a little bigger, but still kind of a small program as well. It has like when I was there, my cohort was considered abnormally large, and that was 5 people. So we joke that it's like 3 ± 3 in the program. So I think there were 18 in total when we started the magic program. So it definitely wasn't always a scientific match, but the way that we set it up was we'd have effectively like a little slide deck of bios of all of the senior people. And like by senior, I mean they were ideally third plus years in grad school. So that, they're not just directly, they're not second years, so they're not directly outside of their first year. So they've had at least 2 years in grad school so they can have enough advice and stuff. Everyone who wanted to be mentor, we'd put their picture there, a little bio about them, and things that they think are their strengths when it comes to mentorship. And then we'd give the effectively the bio slide deck to the incoming students and be like, rank your top 5 that you'd like to have. And also include if you want, and these are all Google Forms, right? But like, and then also include if there's any particular identities you want, like axes of identities that you would like to have matched by at least one of your mentors. Often the responses we get from that are like person of color, woman of color, queer person, a woman, like, and so we would essentially just use all of that information to somehow address all the things that they're wanting with the 3 people. And ideally with the primary mentor being someone who feels like at least a personality match that could be close. And so they can, have that bonding that would work. But another part of this is not only if it's a small program, you got to have people volunteer. And we are busy. Everyone's busy in grad school. Like it's not like you don't have things to do. And so that's also it's a commitment. It's another time management thing that has to be folded in. But it is very much worth it, I will say.
So I think each year we at least have like 7 new graduate students, at least in the ASTRO program, right?
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's good. So one challenge that we have is how to, we all really like to make a community, be more in touch with other students, but something very difficult, which we are dealing with, is that how to get more people, like attending something like Astro Coffee or something like AURORA talks or even Astro Seminar.
Yeah.
Challenge as well. You cannot force people, but you like to have more and more people be in their room.
Yeah. No, I hear you. I hear you so much. It's it's a hard one, right? Like I feel like some university events they do the old, the good old like there's no such thing as a free lunch thing where they'll like bring food or have snacks or something, and that will at least bring people in for a second to get the food and snack. Um, we would sometimes do that where we'd have at least coffee and maybe some donuts. But again, that does have to come out of someone's pocket. That's hard. Um, or unless you get a faculty sponsor who'll pay for it, and that's great. Um, but sometimes what helps is this is also very much like a union organizing type of technique, but like intentionally cultivating relationships with people. Like not like one person having to do all this job, right? But like intentionally like making connections with at least like every person in the department has at least one person who's made a connection with them. And so there's just literally just like they know that there's someone there that cares and there's rapport and there's a network being built. And that goes a long way when suddenly like you have a more direct connection with someone and you're being invited to something, that there's a much higher chance that the person will attend. And then I also think something we emphasized as well with magic was the time commitment, depending on the role that these people led. Obviously, the coordinators would have the most time commitment, and we did. But we really just asked that for an hour a week, they would get coffee or something and chat. So really, the time commitment was an hour a week, and it's okay if not every week worked. And so we tried to like minimize the ask as much as possible and be very explicit about the ask, and so that could help with people factoring in like, do they have the capacity? Um, it's a hard thing, like getting I feel like also grad students often are, I don't know if y'all feel this way in your department. Um, Often change happens at the grad student level or starts at the grad student level. Or, pushing for change or mentioning things that are need to be fixed, like problems in the system. Often it's graduate students who are actually the most vocal about this, um, which is, I think, very like brave and beautiful. And I also hate because, graduate students are some of the most at-risk people in the career stages, at least, right? Um, so I we're already doing a lot. And I feel like, especially if you're already like service or advocacy or outreach oriented, you probably also already have multiple things on your plate. So I think it's just like trying to figure out how to balance that and maybe even coming up with other roles. Like maybe someone's role is just to send an email every week or something. Like there's ways that you can like break down, everyone in the revolution doesn't have to do the same thing. Any of the thoughts, questions, feelings?
Oh, is there any question online? I forgot to ask. I'm sorry. But I assume that you can raise your hand. Okay, no, any questions online?
No, not a question, but I just wanted to say what Tara said, that everything that you said was so good. And while you were talking, I was checking your website.
Oh,
The resources were great. Thanks for those resources.
thank you so much. I appreciate that. It brings me so much joy when someone says they're helpful because, that's the goal, right? We want it to be helpful. So thank you. Appreciate that.
Questions? Do you not have anything else to share with us today? I think we
Yeah,
can.
well, I also want to add, like, please feel free to reach out. Y'all are like anyone is welcome to reach out if you want advice or if you'd like connections or if you have any questions about being at NASA. Like, while I'm still here, I have my foot in the door. I have information. Happy to share. Happy to share my NASA postdoctoral application. I'm happy to share job like think I like just if you need something, we're here to like lift each other up. We lift as we rise. So if y'all need anything, please feel free to reach out.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think we all really enjoyed. Uh, way more than my expectation, honestly, because if you really ask people to share their experience, but I think that's the ideal presentation that we can just send a link to future speaker. That this is a very ideal template. You
No, thank
can
you.
follow it. Okay, I think we can thank Tyler, and we can always.
It was good to see y'all and meet y'all. And good luck with Aurora. This sounds like an awesome program.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We'll put the video on the YouTube and I can share the link with you for sure.
That'd be great. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Bye-bye.